The era of American strategic surprise is not ending with a bang or even a whimper. It is ending with a PDF that someone downloaded on a Tuesday afternoon. In the last 72 hours, the precise locations of 400 advanced missile systems, the kind that decide whether cities exist at sunrise, appeared on platforms where people usually argue about movies and video games. The official response will be measured, calm. They will call it a vulnerability that has been contained. They will assure you that the missiles themselves are still safe. That is true. The missiles are safe. The question nobody wants you to ask is, what about the strategy? Here's what they will not tell you. The United States spends $850 billion annually on defense. It operates an intelligence apparatus so vast that if you tried to count every person with access to classified systems, you would run out of calendar days before you ran out of names. And yet, in the last 20 years, the number of major strategic leaks has increased 400%. Not diplomatic gossip, not embarrassing cables. Operational warfighting data. The kind of information that, in any previous era, would have required sacrificing agents and spending decades to acquire. This is not a hack. This is not a rogue employee. This is not a technical glitch that better software will fix. This is the inevitable outcome of a system that has grown so large, so complex, so entangled with itself, that keeping a secret has become mathematically indistinguishable from publishing it. What you are about to understand is a pattern. It is a pattern that has played out 12 times in the last 200 years, across empires, across technologies, across every attempt humans have made to build machines that can keep secrets forever. The names change. The outcome does not. Today, we are going to trace the blueprint. We are going to watch it unfold in 3 separate histories. And then we are going to place the United States directly on top of that blueprint and measure exactly where the pencil marks land. Because here is the question nobody is asking. What happens to a superpower when the element of surprise simply vanishes? Let us begin with the machine itself. Every intelligence apparatus in history follows the same 4-stage trajectory. It is not a theory, it is an autopsy. Stage 1 is the creation of the vulnerability. A rising power faces threats. It centralizes information. It creates a core group of people who know the things that must be protected. At this stage, the secret is a single point. It is manageable. It is safe. Stage 2 is the over-reliance on what we will call the opacity of scale. The power expands. Its interests become global. The demand for intelligence explodes. You no longer need to know what the enemy general is thinking. You need to know what his supply sergeants are ordering, what the local newspapers are printing, what the fiber optic cables are carrying. The single point becomes a cluster. The cluster becomes a galaxy. And somewhere in this expansion, the system makes a fatal logical leap. It begins to believe that because the secret is buried in an avalanche of data, the secret is safe. It confuses complexity with security. It believes that if the machine is large enough, it becomes invisible. Stage 3 is the catastrophic system failure. The opacity of scale is an illusion. Complexity is not security. Complexity is fragility. The machine becomes so vast that it develops friction points. Contractors, allies, cloud servers, disgruntled analysts. The secret is no longer a single point, it is a million points. The perimeter becomes so long that it is impossible to patrol. A leak occurs, but not just any leak, a systemic revelation. A leak that does not just reveal a fact, but reveals the architecture of the machine itself. It proves to adversaries that the system can be penetrated not by force, but by its own weight. Stage 4 is the strategic reset. The power loses its information asymmetry. Its adversaries now know what it knows, and more importantly, they know what it does not know. The playing field is leveled. The power must now operate in a world where its secrets are assumed to be compromised. Strategy shifts from offense to defense. This is not decline in material terms. It is decline in the one weapon that cannot be countered. Surprise. That is the machine. Now let us watch it run. First case study, the British Admiralty, 1914 to 1917. At the outbreak of World War I, Britain possessed the most advanced intelligence operation on Earth. Room 40. Their vulnerability was their greatest asset. The global undersea cable network. Britain controlled it. They could read German diplomatic traffic. The secret was centralized, physical, manageable. Stage 1 complete. By 1916, the volume of traffic was staggering. Thousands of messages. The Admiralty became reliant on the idea that the Germans would never know they were listening. They believed the noise of the war would mask their success. They grew complacent. They became addicted to the flow. Stage 2, enter the Zimmermann telegram. January 1917. Germany proposes an alliance with Mexico, promising them Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico if they join the war against the United States. Room 40 intercepts and decrypts it, the crown jewel of intelligence. And here's the failure. They could not use it. If they revealed the telegram, the Germans would realize their codes were broken. The machine had become so successful that it had trapped itself. The secret was too hot to handle. They had to concoct an elaborate lie, claiming they stole a clear copy in Mexico to protect the source. The leak was forced not by a spy, but by the system's own inability to contain the truth. Stage 3. The result. The Germans launch a massive investigation. They reset their entire cryptographic system. Britain loses its information advantage. For the rest of the war, they are guessing. Stage 4. The pattern holds. Second case study, the Soviet Union, 1980s. The KGB was the ultimate expression of the paranoid state. Its vulnerability was its belief in its own impenetrability. It created a massive centralized database of intelligence requirements, a list called Red Banner. It told the West exactly what the Soviets did not know. Stage 1. By the early 80s, the KGB was a behemoth, agents across the globe, a vast bureaucracy, an insatiable appetite for Western technology. They believed that if you are recruiting 1,000 spies, nobody will notice one. They relied on the opacity of scale. The secret was not a single agent. It was the architecture of the entire theft operation. Stage 2. Enter Vladimir Vetrov. Code name Farewell. A senior KGB officer walks into the French embassy in Moscow and offers his services. Over months, he hands over thousands of pages detailing the entire technological espionage program. The requirements, the agents, the methods. This was not a leak of names. It was a leak of the system. The West now knows exactly what the Soviets are trying to steal. The CIA does not just arrest the spies, they use the list to feed the Soviets disinformation. Flawed technology designed to fail. The KGB, relying on the opacity of its own scale, has no idea its entire playbook is being used against it. Stage 3. The Soviet technological base, already struggling, is injected with poisoned data. They waste billions reverse engineering technology that is designed to fail. The loss of information integrity accelerates the economic stagnation that collapses the Union. Stage 4. The pattern holds. Third case study, the United States, 2013 to 2017. Post 9/11, America builds the ultimate surveillance state. The NSA creates a stockpile of zero-day exploits, software vulnerabilities unknown to anyone else, digital master keys. The vulnerability is the repository itself. Stage 1. The NSA's equation group believes they can operate in the shadows forever. They rely on the sheer complexity of their networks, compartmentalization, multiple layers of cyber defense. They believe that by making the stockpile hard to reach, they have made it safe. They hoard the exploits instead of patching the vulnerabilities. They rely on the opacity of the digital domain. Stage 2. A group calling themselves the Shadow Brokers dumps the arsenal. They release the hacking tools to the public. It is a systemic revelation. It does not just reveal secrets. It reveals that the world's most advanced cyber power has been penetrated. The tools are quickly adopted by ransomware gangs and nation-states. WannaCry? NotPetya? Attacks that cripple hospitals and corporations worldwide are direct descendants of the NSA's leaked tools. The system fails, not because the code was weak, but because the system was too complex to control. Stage 3. The United States loses its crown jewel. Adversaries now know the NSA's methods. The digital playing field is leveled overnight. The U.S. can no longer assume it has the element of surprise in the cyber domain. Stage 4. The pattern holds for the third time. Now we apply the scalpel to the present. The leak of the 400 missiles. Stage 1. Where is the core vulnerability of the United States in 2024? It is not a physical cable station. It is not a single disgruntled officer. It is the architecture of the fifth domain, the integration of Department of Defense operational planning with the commercial cloud. Specifically, the vulnerability is the system used to coordinate the detection of enemy missile launches and to plan counterstrikes. For the last decade, the U.S. military has been merging its most sensitive data with a vast network of private contractors, cloud service providers, and AI analytical tools. To track 400 missiles from a near-peer adversary, you do not use a single spy. You use algorithms that scrape satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and human reports. That data is aggregated, analyzed, and stored. It has to move. It has to be accessed by analysts in Fort Meade, by generals at CENTCOM, by targeting officers on submarines, and by the software engineers maintaining the platforms. The vulnerability is not the secret. The vulnerability is the pathway, the thousands of endpoints, the millions of lines of code, the APIs connecting the Pentagon to Silicon Valley. The coordinates of 400 missiles are no longer a physical piece of paper in a safe. They are a packet of data moving through a digital nervous system so complex that no single human being can trace its entire journey. Stage 1. Complete. Stage 2. How did the United States convince itself this was safe? By relying on the opacity of scale. The logic was seductive. We have so much data moving through our systems that no adversary could possibly find the one packet that matters. We have machine learning to detect anomalies. We have zero trust architecture. The system is too big to fail. This is the moment of maximum arrogance. The US intelligence community has become addicted to the very complexity that dooms it. They believe that by encrypting everything, they have secured everything. They believe that because they cannot find the leak does not exist. They rely on the opacity of the cloud, the opacity of the contractor workforce, the opacity of the global supply chain for microchips and servers, just as the British believed the Germans would never realize their cables were tapped, just as the KGB believed their vast network would hide a mole, just as the NSA believed their digital fortress was unbreachable. The modern American intelligence state believes that scale is its shield. They have forgotten that scale is a double-edged sword. The more pathways you create for your own analysts, the more pathways you create for the adversary. The more data you store, the more data can be taken. Stage 2, complete. Stage 3, the leak of the 400 missile coordinates is the catastrophic failure. But understand the nature of this failure. This is not a simple hack of a single server. This is a systemic hemorrhage. Check. The data was real. We know this because the originating agencies have not denied the specifics. They have denied the context. They say no operational capability was lost. That is a lie of omission. They mean the missiles are still there. They do not mean the strategy is still secret. Verified. The leak revealed methodology. It did not just say missile A is at coordinates X. It revealed the source of that information. Satellite, signal intercept, human asset. The adversary now knows not just that you know, but how you know. They can move the missile. One 1% of the targeting data for 400 missiles is enough to start a war or lose one. The adversary now knows the limits of the system. They know that the US cannot protect the entire kill chain. They know that the fog of war now extends to the planning rooms in Washington. They know that the surprise is over. Stage 3, complete. Stage 4. We are standing on the precipice of this stage right now. The immediate aftermath is not a change in policy. It is a change in reality. The United States must now assume that its most sensitive operational plans for conflict with a major power are compromised. Not might be, are. The Pentagon will have to assume that any digital plan to strike those 400 missiles is known to the missile owners. They cannot use the element of surprise. They must now move to a posture of brute force instead of precision. They must plan for a war where the enemy knows your opening move. This resets the strategic balance. The adversary gains a decade of intelligence advantage without spending a decade of espionage effort. They know your collection capabilities, they know your analytical priorities, they know your vulnerabilities. They have been handed the blueprint. The United States has now entered stage 4. The era of relying on information asymmetry to deter conflict is over. We have returned to a world where secrets are a liability, not an asset. The pattern is absolute. The machine has run its course. Now we must dismiss the myths first. American exceptionalism. The belief that the United States, with its advanced technology and its can-do spirit, can patch this vulnerability is a fantasy. The British were exceptional. The Soviet apparatus was exceptional. The NSA's equation group was exceptional. The physics of complex systems does not care about your national spirit. Complexity breeds failure. It is a mathematical law, not a political opinion. Second, modern economic optimism. The argument that because the stock market is high and the economy is churning, the intelligence failure is irrelevant. This is catastrophic myopia. Strategic surprise is the precursor to kinetic conflict. When an adversary knows your hand, they are emboldened to raise the stakes. The economic cost of a miscalculated war dwarfs the cost of a data leak by a factor of 1,000,000. The market will not save you from the consequences of a system that can no longer see. Third, technology will save us. The very idea that AI and machine learning will solve the leak problem is the same delusion that created it. We are trying to solve the problem of complexity with more complexity. We will build AI to monitor the networks, and then we will need AI to monitor the AI. We will create a fractal of oversight that eventually becomes so deep that no human can verify its integrity. Technology is not the solution. Technology is the vector. The answer is not a better firewall. The answer is admitting that the era of total information awareness is over. So what is the actionable insight? Do not be caught unaware. The next phase of the pattern is strategic unpredictability. If you cannot hide your plans, you must make your plans chaotic. The United States will likely abandon long-term calculated strategies for short-term reactive maneuvers. This creates instability. The world becomes more dangerous, not because anyone wants it to, but because the system demands it. For you, the viewer, the insight is this. Understand the machine. Do not trust the institution to protect your data. Do not trust the system to keep secrets. The same fragility that just leaked 400 missile coordinates is the fragility that leaks your identity, your finances, your privacy. The collapse of the American intelligence perimeter is a symptom of a much larger collapse of trust in all large-scale complex systems. You are watching the end of the surveillance age, not because the watchers have become moral, because their machine has become too loud. It has started to leak its own oil, and the fire is spreading. If you want to understand how this machine was built, brick by brick, from the National Security Act of 1947 to the rise of the military-industrial cloud complex, there is more to uncover. This video is the diagnosis. The next is the anatomy. The era of surprise is over. The era of consequence has begun. Subscribe now. Do not wait until the next leak confirms the pattern. Do not be the last one to understand how the world actually works. The machine is broken. And the warning lights are flashing red.